Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today my guest is the author Trenace Rose, who was introduced to Transcendental Meditation at the age of 16 and has been an active person in the science of yoga as a spiritual practice for the last 24 years. I want to welcome to our show this very spiritual woman, Trenace Rose.
And it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning.
Well, thank you. I have to thank you because you have a lot of information and education that you're going to teach our audience. So let's start with your book, because I think that's a very important thing for our audience to know about. So tell us the name. It's a little difficult for me to pronounce it, so you tell everybody about it, and that's it. Go ahead.
Okay, the title of the book is Akashic Alphabet, and the meaning of the word Akasha is sky, space, or ether. It's a Sanskrit word, and people may have heard of the Akashic records, and they are metaphorically described as a library of mystical knowledge encoded in the space between matter, which is a non-physical plane of existence. And it suggests a space-time continuum. The records are said to contain all the knowledge of human experience and the history of the cosmos. The prophetic healer Edgar Cayce shared that he received much of his information from the Akashic records. So this non-physical plane of existence, which has been confirmed by many top-tiered physicists in the last couple of decades, can also be considered to reside in the collective consciousness. So when we meditate deeply with the highest, purest intent, we can tap into the collective and receive information from the Akasha. I believe all answers can be received from within.
Now, Trenace, you know that this is a kind of, how do I say it, a very spiritual look at, and I'm sure that a lot of people meditate, but you're describing meditation in a way that's a little difficult, and some people may think, and forgive me for this, but I have to say this, they may say, what is she talking about? So I want you to describe this a little bit more for the layman.
Okay. There are varying levels of meditation. Paramahansa Yogananda was famous for introducing Kriya Yoga to the West, and one can actually join an organization and obtain wonderful lessons, many pages of lessons on how to evolve and learn about what yoga is about and learn different exercises and so forth. But there are many forms of it. So of Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga involves meditation. Transcendental meditation is a little different than the yoga that I practice with my yoga in recent years. But basically all meditation is just sitting very quietly and allowing your mind to slow down and to allow thoughts to come in, not to resist anything, just allow the thoughts to come in, flow in and go out, and flow in and go out. And gradually one can reach a state of calmness and centeredness. And at that point, after a few moments, we begin to receive information in varying forms. Some people will receive visions, graphic kinds of visions, pictures in their mind. Others may receive words or information that will come into them. But it's when you're really very quiet and you've let go of a lot of the present that's going on around you, so that you're almost literally suspended in time and space, and all of the outer peripheral doesn't really even anymore. You're in just a beautiful, quiet, centered space, and then information can come in and flow in for you.
That's, as I listen to you, I'm almost in a state of meditation myself. Your voice is quite wonderful. It's very, what shall I say, meditative. It does it he does the trick. Because as I listen to you, I'm literally getting involved in form of meditation, which is also transcendental. Now, let's talk a little further about your book. It's life viewed through a different looking glass. And you're an award-winning author examining the light of universal connection in all. Explain that.
Well, the message of the book is that it's my feeling that a conscious message is taking place in our dimension, and that each soul has subconsciously chosen an individual rate of spiritual growth and ascension. So those at the forefront may be quite aware that you're acting as catalysts in a vital process of raising the vibration for all living beings, including our cherished Mother Earth. The book has been called a compendium of ancient futuristic blueprint. It's a series of vision narratives coupled with acutely sensitive 12-inch tall full-page illustrations painted by a very gifted master artist. And these convey various spiritual and cultural belief systems across the continents and even gently touching into other dimensions, which reveal a graceful connection of oneness in all. So, Susan, when you ask me this question, you may agree that much of the media news, while it's often very important, can tend to dwell on sensationalist happenings, right, which are frequently of a darker nature. The carefully crafted scenes in my book are glimpses into what is also often going on simultaneously across continents and different spheres that's positive and for the good of mankind, but it's not publicly broadcast. Mm-hmm. So it's my prayer that humanity be made aware of this other remarkable side of life that is taking place, which has a tremendous value and power in its goodness, with an ability to counterbalance and defend the lower energies on our planet.
Wow. Now, there are a number of quotes in this article that I'm looking at. His Holiness appreciates your book for its contribution to spiritual and religious harmony and peace in the world. And that was said by Tenzin Sherab, who's the special assistant to the Holiness Dalai Lama. Now, there's another one, and that's quite wonderful, too. Fred Allen Wolfe, who's a PhD and author of 11 books, said, a visual treat showing to the A to Z's of Akashic record. Oh, and mine too, we're all there. So apparently there's plenty of people who appreciate your work. Now, let me ask you something. Is this work applicable to anybody? Can anybody meditate, and can anybody feel and experience what you're talking about?
Yes, the audience for the book is really everyone. Baby boomers, aging seniors, their loved ones and caregivers, art aficionados, even intuitive young adults. The book is offered, it was offered on one level to bring comfort and to help release fear-based consciousness to people who are ill and or may be facing imminent life transition. Spiritual seekers who are tuned into this global, this metamorphic global shift that is going on right now will deeply resonate with the material. But also, for all inquiring minds in general, the book can be used as an introductory spiritual learning tool. I wrote in the introduction, Akashic Alphabet will surprise and delight all those who are able to think outside the vast delusional box of reality. It's a powerful lift for the soul. So it really is applicable to everyone.
Well, let's get a definition and the meaning of Akasha before we go on.
Okay, well now I think I described that to you initially. Mm-hmm. The word Akasha is an ancient Sanskrit word, pardon me, and it means sky, space, or ether. So the Akasha, that energy, is in a non-physical plane of existence, in the space between matter. And this non-physical plane of existence, which I had mentioned has been confirmed by top-tiered quantum physicists, can also be considered to reside in the collective consciousness, and that's why we can access it through meditation.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember many years ago that the Transcendental Meditation group went to prisons, and they went into schools, and they tried to teach the prisoners and the children in the schools how to meditate. Now, you talked about baby boomers, you talked about various other people, but you see, it sounds like transcendental meditation is for everyone.
Yes, and not necessarily just transcendental meditation, because there are many different forms of meditation, but it is for everyone. All it is a quieting of the mind so that we can reach an inner stillness, and then that opens us to be able to receive. We're so harried and we're so bombarded by constant distractions in our lives on so many levels today, more than ever, as we know in this high-tech age.
Yes.
So it is really becoming ever more crucial for us to be able to get to a place of stillness in our lives, maybe even in just a room in your home that's a sanctuary space, anywhere where you can just be quiet. Many top executives in the world, leaders of Fortune 100 companies, meditate in their offices a couple times a day because it centers them and it allows them to really focus and receive great clarity in their thought process. So it's an invaluable tool on just every level.
Now, you mentioned yoga, you actually didn't mention deep breathing. Let's talk about that. How important is it to deep breathe, and can you explain how that works? And what about yoga? Let's talk about that too.
Okay. Breath is vital, and there are many exercises that one can utilize for breath work. For example, I went to a workshop many years ago, and I had not researched it as thoroughly as I normally do. And what happened was they had us doing a certain type of breathing, which was almost not a hyperventilating, but a more rapid form of deep inhalation. So what that did was it transports people into a different space, a completely different space. And when you're transported that way with the breathing, that is when out-of-body experiences can often happen. In yoga itself, yoga means the yoke or the union of mind and spirit, mind, body, spirit. It's the union of all of it. So it's resulting in this beautiful combination. Many yoga practices today are really just merely exercise classes, but the true science of yoga is a very spiritual practice, linking one to source. I had a wonderful teacher for many years, Tom Kelly at the Soul of Yoga in Encinitas, who had been an SRF monk for about 26 years and retired with grace, and several years later set up a beautiful place called the Soul Center. And in his classes, I experienced a really strong connection and a union with God or Source, however one wants to refer to it, because he would download information. He reminded me of a kind of an American Gandhi, a very radiant being, full of light, and he would sit cross-legged in front of the class, and he would download information and then be speaking to us gently and softly, doing all of our asanas, our practices, our exercises. So infusing us with this beautiful energy and allowing us to open our minds and really connect. So when one does yoga, it really is to be done with great reverence and as a sacred practice, so that it opens you for communion with all, with the connection and everything. And it's just a fabulous way to connect and to get grounded and to just help you on many different facets of your life.
Trenace, here is something that really confuses me. This world is in a traumatic situation right now. It's just scary, the only way I can say it. And a lot of people around the world are dealing with all this fighting and the problems that about immigration and various other things. Now, how come, I mean, in India and Pakistan's a problem right now, how come they're probably the first people to meditate and to do yoga, and yet look at the problems that they're creating and that we have. So why do you think that here are people who are doing all of that, I think, and yet they're turning the world around in not a good place?
Well, that's a very interesting question. My intuitive feeling about all of this is that the minds that are creating the terrorism are not well. They've either been socialized or brainwashed to believe many things of a darker nature. And the people who are practicing terrorist tactics cannot be meditating and connecting to God and Source. It is more likely, in my opinion, that they've become almost brainwashed followers, like sheep, following minds that are very, very unwell. And so I think mental illness on this planet is extremely pervasive and much, much more so than any statistics or records show. The degree of mental illness is just exorbitant all over the planet. And we even have world leaders that may be even considered psychopathic, or sociopathic. Yeah. So what yogis do in this regard, true yogis who are in the light, the key is to remain in the highest light, meaning to not allow yourself to delve down into darker energy forces or allow demonic kinds of energies to consume you. You sift through all of that. We encounter it every day. All of us encounter all of these darker energies every day of our lives, and we can choose to immerse in them, or we can choose to go away from them and simply, just like walking around a walkway that you would just avoid certain things. You can choose to remain in those states or in those forces or go away from them. But the key that yogis believe is not to live in a la-la land, not to act as if it doesn't exist, because you accept what's happening, you acknowledge all of the horrors and the terrors and everything that's going on, and then you allow it to come in and you surround it and you immerse it in the white light of love, just love, 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 and forgiveness, and then you just let it go. You let it go, and you ask that those situations and those people be given love and forgiveness. And when you have a collective consciousness doing that, if millions and millions of people were practicing that notion, it's very, very powerful energetically.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about you. There are so many people in this world who practice all the things that you're talking about, but how did you get started, and what led you to want to really be a practitioner of this meditation, to write a book, to do all the things that you're doing? What was your inspiration, and why did you do it?
I think a big crux and a turning point in my life was when I lost my husband. I was very young, and he had leukemia, and I went through a bone marrow transplant with him at UCLA, and I learned quite a lot about the medical profession during that time. When he passed, as I was so young, it was very shocking, and I was in grief for quite a while. But my mother arranged, my mother arranged for me to have a meeting with a world-renowned channeler. Now, these days, there are just many, many hundreds of people who call themselves psychics and channelers and so forth. But decades ago, while there were still many present, it was not as popular a topic. This man had many hundreds of books written about him in the library. His name was Reverend George Daisley. He was from Great Britain. And when I met him, he was probably in his, I'd say, mid-60s. I met him in Montecito in Santa Barbara, and I had a 2-hour reading with him. And I went in with a young mind, open, but rather skeptical. And what I received from him was incredible. For 2 hours straight, he talked to me about literally dozens of situations that my husband and I had experienced together, what he was doing after he had passed. He even used dialogue, verbiage of names and phrases that my husband had called me specifically, down to just minutia detail. So I was completely, to coin a commenter, I was really blown away by the whole thing.
Sure.
It really impacted me. So that, I went through a kind of a metamorphic change over that next few months, and I was really perceiving the world very differently, and wondering why everyone had seemed so different to me. And it didn't dawn on me until about a year and a half later that I was the one who had really shifted and was just perceiving everything so differently. But it led me on a search, and I began reading over the next 20 years many, many books on spirituality and metaphysics and reincarnation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my brother was married in Napa Valley some years later, and as I was leaving the wedding from this beautiful vineyard, I came upon this beautiful metaphysical bookstore, and I spent about several hours in there finding all of these wondrous books. But anyway, that was the beginning of all the journey. And since that time, I have taken many workshops and studied in different areas. And one thing just kind of leads to another. This is the way it goes in life. You know, one thing leads you to another. And I was just really going with the flow, which has led me to where I am today. But the seed for this book was planted as I was reading a passage from Yogananda's book, The Second Coming of Christ, The Resurrection of the Christ in Man.
Right. Well, wow. Very interesting stuff. Now, last but not least, if anybody wants to study with you or to read your book, to experience what you're describing as a metaphysical and fabulous opportunity to feel free, to feel life, to feel passion, how do they do that? How do they reach you? How do they get your book? And if you have a last word, I want you to kind of tell our audience about it as well.
Okay. The way you can find the book is the book website, or you can go to Amazon, and the book website is www.akashicalphabet.com, and that's spelled AKASHIC ALPHAB, is that right? ALPHABET, AkashicAlphabet.com. It's also listed on Amazon, and it's available in all bookstores, and it's distributed through Barnes & Noble as well.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because I really didn't ask you about the alphabet. That's a very important thing. Now, you say in some of the questions that you helped me put together, the golden saffron draped trees and white elephant in the fifth vignette. E is for energy, H is for healing. Let's talk about that before we end the show.
One of the visions I received, and most of the material in the book was received in meditation through visions that I received, was of a lush green forest that had many, many trees draped with what appeared in my mind's eye as beautiful yellow golden ribbons. And I saw white elephants roaming, and I thought, what in the world is this? And I did some research, and I discovered that many Asian Tibetan monks have been draping trees with golden saffron cloth. And this keeps the government officials from harming or cutting the trees down.
Oh.
The trees are then considered blessed, ordained tree monks, and so they're not touched. So these have created massive wildlife sanctuaries, and rare white elephants have actually found refuge in some of them.
Wonderful.
And it also is a double blessing because many of the indigenous plants of the region are spared, which in turn provide this wonderful ingredients for Ayurvedic formulas. So this was such an excellent example of an intentional, selfless act taking place on the planet that the mainstream public probably has no awareness of. I wanted to share it. So when I received the visions, and then I would research what these visions meant, I would always receive this beautiful substantiated information. And so the intensive glossary at the back of the book really opens and expands that panorama of awareness for each vignette because it contains many, many key words and phrases that many people may not understand or be aware of. So that's the way I structured it.
Yeah. Now, another interesting thing that I heard you talk about is Ayurvedic. That is something I know that's part of transcendental meditation, but let's describe and let's define that word Ayurvedic because so many people don't know about it.
Well, Ayurvedic medicine is a treatment of medicine. It is very ancient, and it is based on treating the body holistically. In other words, not just treating each individual system or part of the body, but it looks at the body as a whole. So it's considered a holistic form of treatment. And many different supplements or herbs are used to treat the body for different illnesses and diseases. And Ayurvedic also incorporates, it really incorporates the mind, body, spirit of way of healing, meaning that you bring the mind and the spirit into balance and into harmony, because the body, when it becomes diseased or not or unwell, it is because it's out of balance. It's out of balance. So the key for good health and radiant life is to attempt to keep the mind, the body, and the spirit all in a beautiful harmonic balance, so that it can all function. Because the body reflects the mind. It reflects it.
That is an incredible, interesting story. Well, now I want you to say the last word, because there are many things that you probably have on your mind that you'd like to share with our audience. So why don't you do that? Because, wow, you have so much information, and it gives me the feeling that the glass is half full rather than the glass being half empty. You have that inspiration to me. So let me hear what you have to say to our audience so that we can close the show on a good note.
Okay, well, what I would like to do is just truly express my gratitude to the beautiful master artist painter who I was so blessed to be put in touch with, and whose energies just beautifully exemplified my visions. His name is Master Artist Sergei Ayarov, and he saw my card at UCSD. It was at the Student Center there. I searched for over a year. I went through 30-some artists and looked at their work, and he read the card, loved the book project, said he was very interested. As soon as I saw his site, it was like a lightning bolt hit me. It was his guru is Michelangelo, and his work shows this extraordinary refinement in his imagery, and it was exactly what I had seen in my mind's eye. So it turned out that he was a devotee of Yogananda, and here I was looking all over the country, and he lived 10 minutes from me. So it was almost an uncanny connection, and I believe we were divinely guided to meet and work together. And his artwork is all over the world in museums and temples and homes, galleries, everywhere. And I want to thank him for his beautiful contribution to make this book possible.
Oh, wow. Well, my guest today has been a very interesting woman, and her name is Trenace Rose. And Trenace has a book, which they say, Life Viewed Through a Different Looking Glass, and she's an award-winning author examining the light of the universal connection in all. Thank you for being on my show, Trenace Rose.
Thank you so much for having me, Susan.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.